The Cowboys are making moves that don't make any sense on the surface, and Jerry Jones just dropped some comments about Jadaveon Clowney, Bobby Wagner, and Brandon Aubrey that reveal way more than you think. And before we break all of this down, you need to hit that subscribe button right now because we're one of the only channels breaking down every single Cowboys transaction the second it happens. And I'm seeing way too many of you watching without subscribing. So do me a favor and tap that button because Cowboys Nation needs to stay locked in together on this stuff. Alright, so here's the deal. Free agency is winding down, the draft is a few weeks away, and Dallas still has some glaring holes on this roster that everyone can see. And the big question floating around is whether they're going to address any of it before Roger Goodell steps to the podium, or if they're just going to ride with what they have and hope the draft bails them out. Let me start with Jadaveon Clowney because this situation has gone from looking like a sure thing to looking completely dead in the water, and the timeline of how it fell apart tells you everything you need to know about how this front office operates and how much power the coaching staff actually has in personnel decisions. So Clowney played for Dallas last season, and by most accounts he was solid, not spectacular, but he gave them exactly what they needed in rotational snaps. And down the stretch, he was actually playing some of his best football. He came out recently and talked about how much he loved being a Cowboy. Said playing on Thanksgiving and Christmas in front of massive audiences was special. Said the primetime games every single week were something he really enjoyed. And when asked if he'd come back, he made it pretty clear he's open to it. And he specifically mentioned the Cowboys as a team he'd be interested in returning to. And here's the kicker. Clowney said he can play in any defensive scheme. Whether it's a 4-3 base or a 3-4 base, he's done it all throughout his career, so there's no scheme fit. Excuse you can use to say he doesn't work. Now early on, when the Cowboys were talking about their edge rushers and who they wanted to bring back, Clowney's name was right there next to DeMarcus Lawrence and Chauncey Golston. The front office was saying all the right things about wanting continuity and bringing back guys who know the system. But then something changed, and that something was the hiring of Christian Parker as the new defensive line coach. Once Parker got brought in, the tone from the Jones family shifted completely, and it went from "we love Clowney and want him back" to "well, we have to evaluate scheme fit, and we're really excited about our young guys." And suddenly Clowney wasn't part of the conversation anymore. Stephen Jones has basically danced around the issue without saying it directly, but Jerry was a little more diplomatic when he was asked about it recently. And here's what he said. He said, "It's real hard not to have a place for Clowney after what he gave us last year, but you can't have it all. You just can't have it all. And if things go right for us, we've already made signings and trades, and we think that's the better way to go. Plus, we have the draft coming up." Jerry also made a point to hype up Donovan Ezeraku, saying they probably should have had him out there more last season, and they're counting on him to take a big leap this year, especially as a pass rusher. And then Jerry flat out said, that has something to do big time with the Clowney decision. So let me translate that for you. The new defensive line coach came in, evaluated the personnel, decided he wants to go younger and develop Ezeraku instead of paying a veteran rotational piece, and the front office is going along with it even though Clowney is a known commodity who performed well for them just a few months ago. Now look, I'm all for developing young talent, and Ezeraku has some serious potential, but the crazy part is that these two things are not mutually exclusive. You can play Ezeraku more snaps and still have Clowney in the rotation, because depth on the edge is never a bad thing, and we saw what happened last year when guys got hurt or worn down. The reality is, the Cowboys are choosing not to bring Clowney back because they don't want to spend the money. It's that simple. And they're using the coaching change and the development of younger players as cover for a financial decision. And here's what nobody is talking about. Clowney isn't going to be in a rush to sign anywhere. His history shows he usually waits until July or August to ink a deal. So theoretically, Dallas could circle back if they have an injury in camp or if they strike out in the draft. But right now, there's been zero reported contact between the two sides, and all signs point to this being over. Clowney has also mentioned Baltimore as another potential landing spot, And if you believe the reports, the Ravens were trying to go after both Trey Hendrickson and Maxx Crosby and only ended up with one of them, so maybe they have room for another edge piece. But barring something unexpected, I don't think the Cowboys are actively pursuing this at all. And I think that's a mistake because you can never have too many pass rushers, and Clowney proved he still has something left in the tank. Now let's flip over to Bobby Wagner because this one is even more frustrating when you actually dig into what was said versus what's actually happening. Brian Schottenheimer was doing an interview recently and he was asked directly about Bobby Wagner, and Schotty went out of his way to praise the guy, said he's one of the biggest Bobby Wagner fans in the world after coaching against him for 3 years in Seattle, said he loves the way Wagner competes and talks trash in a good way, said Wagner is still playing at a high level, and then finished it off with, "We'll see how everything works out." On the surface, that sounds like genuine interest, right? Like Schottenheimer wants to bring in a guy he knows and respects to anchor the linebacker room and bring some veteran leadership to a unit that desperately needs it. But here's the thing, when you actually break down what Schotty said, he didn't answer the question he was asked. The question was, what conversations have you had about potentially signing Bobby Wagner? And instead of answering that, he just gave a generic compliment about how great Wagner is, which is classic coach speak and means absolutely nothing. It's the same thing he did when asked about other free agents. Just throw out some praise, say you respect the player, and move on without actually committing to anything or revealing what's happening behind closed doors. We are now in early April. Free agency has been open for over a month, and the Cowboys have shown zero tangible interest in signing any of the veteran linebackers who are still available, and that includes Bobby Wagner, so you need to pay attention to what they're doing, not what they're saying. Because if Dallas really wanted Wagner, they could have signed him already. There is literally nothing stopping them, because they're not playing the compensatory pick game anymore. Stephen Jones confirmed that, and they have a massive glaring need at inside linebacker that everyone can see from a mile away. The current depth chart at that spot is Marist Overshown, Shamar James, and Justin Barron, and if that doesn't scare you, then I don't know what will, because that is not a playoff caliber linebacker room. Overshown has potential, but he's coming off an injury and hasn't proven he can stay healthy. Shamar James is a special teams guy, and Justin Barron is a complete unknown, so the fact that the Cowboys are comfortable rolling into the draft with that group tells you they either have a plan to address it early in the draft, or they're delusional about what they have on the roster. Now, to be fair to the Cowboys, Bobby Wagner is still unsigned in April for a reason, and that reason is his coverage skills have dropped off significantly. He's still a really good run support player. His tackle numbers are always impressive whether he was in Seattle or LA or Washington, and he's got the football IQ and the instincts to diagnose plays before they develop, which is why he's been able to play at his age. But if you watch the tape, he struggles in coverage against tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. And in today's NFL, where every offense is spreading you out and throwing to the middle of the field, you can't have a liability at linebacker in coverage, or you're going to get carved up. The Cowboys clearly want a linebacker who can cover and run sideline to sideline and has the athleticism to match up with modern offenses, and Bobby Wagner just isn't that guy anymore. So would I sign him? Yeah, I probably would on a cheap one-year deal just to have a veteran presence in the room and someone who can play on rundowns. But I understand why Dallas isn't jumping at the opportunity, because they want someone who fits their defensive vision, and Wagner doesn't check all the boxes. The problem is, they don't have anyone on the roster right now who does check those boxes. So unless they nail a linebacker pick in the draft, they're going to be in trouble. And that brings me to the next name on the list, which is Brandon Aubrey and the contract extension situation. Jerry Jones was asked about where things stand with Aubrey and whether there's been any progress toward a long-term deal, and Jerry played it close to the vest as usual. He said he's satisfied with where things are, even though Aubrey hasn't signed the restricted free agent tender yet, said they have long-term plans, but he's not going to get into details because it's still a negotiation. And that was basically it. Here's what we know. The Cowboys have Aubrey on the RFA tender worth $5.77 million this year, And if they wanted to tag him next year, it would cost around $7.27 million. So they've got him under control for at least 2 more seasons if they want to go that route. But everyone knows this is heading toward Aubrey becoming the highest paid kicker in the NFL. The only question is by how much, and that's where the negotiation is probably stuck right now. Aubrey and his agent want to reset the market and get paid like the elite weapon he is. Because let's be real, the dude can hit from 60+ yards, and he's automatic inside of 50. He's not just a kicker, he's a legitimate strategic advantage that changes how you call games. The Cowboys, on the other hand, don't want to completely blow up the kicker market and set a precedent that affects every other team in the league. So they're probably trying to make him the highest paid kicker without going so far above everyone else that it becomes a problem. I'm perfectly fine with making Brandon Aubrey the highest paid kicker in football. I think he's earned it, and I think he's worth every penny. But I also don't want to see Dallas give him $9 or $10 million a year and create a situation where they're hamstrung financially at other positions. The beauty of the RFA tender and the potential franchise tag is that the Cowboys have leverage, they don't have to rush into a deal, and they can let this play out over the next few months and see if they can find a number that works for both sides. The other factor here is that no other team has shown interest in offering Aubrey a contract and giving up a second-round pick to sign him away. And that tells you the rest of the league isn't willing to break the market for a kicker either, even if he's as good as Aubrey is. So my guess is this gets done eventually, probably sometime before the season starts, and Aubrey ends up with a deal that makes him the highest paid kicker by a decent margin, but not by a ridiculous amount, and everyone moves on happy. Do I think it gets done before the draft? Honestly, I don't know, but I do think both sides want it done, and it's just a matter of finding the right number. Now, let's get to the big one, Maxx Crosby, because Jerry Jones was asked yet again about the possibility of revisiting a trade, and at this point, it's like, okay, do we really need to keep asking the same question over and over when we already know the answer? Jerry said he doesn't anticipate revisiting that situation right now, but when pressed on whether it's possible, he said, yes, it's possible, and that's been his line this entire time, so it's not new information or breaking news or anything that should get anyone excited. The reality is the door was closed on the Cowboys when the Ravens trade fell apart because of the physical, and once that happened, the Raiders basically told Maxx Crosby to come back, and they'd figure it out together, and Crosby took that as a sign from the football gods that he's meant to stay in Vegas. He said that on his podcast. He said he feels like this was the universe telling him he doesn't need to leave, and he's bought back into what the Raiders are building. So the leverage that existed a few weeks ago when he was openly wanting out is completely gone now. The Raiders aren't going to take way less in a trade just because, and the Ravens deal set the market at a level that Dallas probably can't match. So unless something drastic changes between now and the draft, this is a dead issue. The other problem, and this is a big one, is that the Cowboys' future first-round picks are essentially frozen because of draft pick trades they've already made. One report said the 2027 first is frozen. Another report confirmed the 2028 first is definitely frozen because of a poison pill provision in a previous trade. So even if Dallas wanted to go all in and offer a future first-round pick for Crosby, they literally can't do it until those picks unfreeze. Now, could this come back up at the trade deadline? Yeah, absolutely. If the Raiders are sitting at 2-6 going into Halloween and they realize they're not going anywhere this season, the Crosby trade rumors will heat up again, I promise you that. But here's the thing. That doesn't help the Cowboys right now in terms of addressing their pass rush need for this upcoming season, and by the time the trade deadline rolls around, Dallas will already know what kind of team they have and whether they're buyers or sellers themselves. Jerry also kind of implied that the Ravens were right to void the deal based on what showed up in the physical. He said you have to pass a physical. We never complete an agreement until a player passes. Your doctors and trainers get involved and take a look, and that's just part of the territory. And then he said the Cowboys would have had the same conditions if Crosby had come to Dallas. So reading between the lines, it sounds like whatever the Ravens saw in that physical was concerning enough that Dallas would have backed out too. And that tells you this wasn't just Baltimore being overly cautious. There was something real there that gave them pause. Big picture, you need to stop wasting your mental energy on a Maxx Crosby trade. Because it's just not happening right now. The Raiders and Crosby are staying together for the time being. The picks are frozen. The leverage is gone. And the Cowboys have moved on to other options. Does that mean it's impossible forever? No. Maybe after this season, when picks unfreeze and situations change, it becomes a possibility again. But for the immediate future, it's a dead end, and you're better off focusing on what Dallas can actually do, which is hit on their draft picks and develop the young edge rushers they already have on the roster. And that brings me back to the bigger point I want to make about all of this. The Cowboys are in a weird spot right now where they're trying to balance win-now mode with building for the future, and I'm not sure they're doing either one particularly well. They're not going out and getting veteran free agents like Clowney or Wagner who could help them win now, but they're also not tearing it down and fully committing to a youth movement. They're kind of stuck in the middle, doing a little bit of both and not enough of either, and that's a dangerous place to be in this league. The linebacker situation is the perfect example. They know they have a need. They know there are veterans available who could fill that need. They know the draft is a crapshoot, and there's no guarantee the guy you want will be there when you pick. And yet they're choosing to roll the dice on the draft instead of adding a proven veteran to at least give themselves a safety net. Is that because they're cheap? Is it because they have a specific plan? Is it because the coaching staff thinks they can develop the guys they have? I honestly don't know. But what I do know is that the margin for error in the NFC is razor thin. And if you miss on a couple of draft picks, or if you have a couple of injuries in the wrong spots, you can go from playoff team to missing the postseason real quick. The same thing applies to the edge rush spot. They lost some production from last year. They didn't replace it in free agency. They're banking on guys like Ezeraku taking a leap, and they're hoping to hit in the draft. But what if Ezeraku doesn't develop as fast as they hope? What if the draft pick takes time to adjust? What if Micah Parsons misses time? Then what? You're stuck with a pass rush that can't get home and a defense that gets picked apart because you can't generate pressure. I'm not saying the sky is falling. I'm saying the Cowboys are playing a risky game and they better hit on these draft picks, because if they don't, they're going to regret not adding some veteran depth when they had the chance. And before we wrap this up, I want you to smash that subscribe button one more time if you haven't already, because we're going to be all over the draft coverage and every move Dallas makes from now until September, and you don't want to miss a single update. So here's my final take on all of this. The Cowboys are betting on themselves. They're betting on their ability to draft well. They're betting on their coaching staff to develop young players. And they're betting on their current roster to stay healthy and take the next step. And those are big bets with a lot of risk attached. Do I think they should have brought back Clowney on a cheap deal? Yeah, I do. Do I think they should have signed Bobby Wagner to a one-year prove-it contract just to have a veteran in the linebacker room? Yeah, I probably would have done that too. Do I think they should keep pushing for Maxx Crosby? No, I think that ship has sailed and they need to move on. Do I think they need to get Brandon Aubrey locked up long-term? 100% yes, because you don't let a weapon like that hit the open market. The draft is going to make or break this offseason for Dallas. If they come away with a starting caliber linebacker and another edge rusher who can contribute right away, then maybe this whole strategy works out. But if they whiff on those picks, then we're going to be sitting here in September wondering why they didn't do more when they had the chance. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you have brought back Clowney? Would you sign Bobby Wagner? Do you think the Aubrey deal gets done? And what do you think about the Maxx Crosby situation? I want to hear from all of you, because Cowboys Nation always has the best takes and we're in this together. So let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's go Cowboys.